Hello class, this is Brian from financialtrainingschool.com and welcome to GT305 Unemployment. The reason why I'm making this video now is because recently I've gotten quite a few number of people emailing me asking how do I trade unemployment data or unemployment rate. And for the most part, most of these emails contain the same question because they're always asking why do the markets move the opposite of the report numbers? Because let's say the report comes out good, but then the markets move opposite as if it's bad, and vice versa. And then sometimes it goes in the same direction, sometimes it goes in the opposite direction. So hopefully by the end of this lesson, the knowledge that you gain will answer that question. Because basically I'm going to start with some basic definitions, then some calculations, and then some concerns and the problems. That's mainly where you want to focus on, because the concerns are why things move opposite in the markets. Because there are some people that understand what's going on, and some people that just look at the numbers without understanding why. So let's get started. So let's just start off with some basic definitions to put things into perspective. The adult population is everyone that is capable of working legally. So depending on where you live, this may be 16 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, depending on where you live. The labor force is everyone that is currently employed and unemployed. The employment is everyone that is currently working. Unemployment is everyone who is not working but are actively looking for work. And this is a very key part of unemployment. It means that even though you're not working, you're still, every day you're going out, sending out your resumes, you're going online on job search sites, you're walking door to door trying to find a job. That's unemployed. Discouraged workers, however, are people that are not working and are also not actively looking for work. So the prominent example that I tend to use for discouraged workers are either retired people. So people who are retired are not working and they're not looking for work, hence they're retired. Or homeless people. Homeless people are not working, they rely on welfare, and they're not looking for work. So those are the two types, just to differentiate between the unemployed and discouraged. And some additional info is that employment numbers usually include both full-time and part-time workers, because in the government's eyes, as long as you're working, then you're considered to be employed. So those are the definitions. Moving on to some calculations. There are two primary calculations that we look at when we're looking at employment data. First one is participation rate, which is the percentage of the adult population that is currently in the labor force, and the unemployment rate, which is the percentage of the labor force that is currently unemployed. So on the right, you'll see I have some circles drawn. The circles represent adults in our population. White circles are the discouraged workers, i.e. people who are not in the workforce. Green and red are the people that are either employed, which is green for money, and red is unemployed, for people who are not working and not making money. So the first thing to calculate is participation rate, which is basically all of the colored circles divided by the total number of circles. So you have U, which is the red circle, 1, plus, and the employed, which is the green circles, which is 7, and the total is 8 here plus 6 there is 14. So that's 8 over 14, which is 57.1%. The next thing to calculate is unemployment rate. So unemployment rate is basically you're looking at the colored circles only, and you're dividing the red by the red plus green. So you have unemployed, which is the red, 1, and then you have 1 at the bottom, plus employed is 7. This is 1 over 8, which is 12.5%. So this is just basic calculations. When the employment data comes out, usually you get the unemployment rate and the employment change. Employment change is just how many new jobs were created, and the unemployment rate is what we just calculated right now. So that basically concludes the background theory knowledge of unemployment and employment. Now, the primary focus of this lesson is to talk about the concerns. And the concerns are basically what you should be concerned about when you're trading these in the markets. So that when the report comes out at the beginning of the month, when you actually read it and you go in and read it, not just look at the numbers plainly, you'll hopefully understand why the markets are moving in the appropriate direction that they are moving. So there are two primary concerns: false optimism and false pessimism. False optimism usually comes from higher than normal employment numbers during odd times of the years. The main question that you should be asking when you're seeing these numbers is, what is the source of the new employment? Is it full-time or part-time workers? Because if you recall from the first slide, both full-time and part-time are included in the employment numbers, and that's a flaw in the system. Because what if suddenly you get a surge in part-time workers, but that just shows employment change is a huge number? So for example, during election time or census, the government is known to hire short-term part-time workers, and this causes employment numbers to spike for a couple of months. Think about that. In an election year, let's say, for example, for the elections to count up all the votes, you need, say, 10,000 full-time workers. Full-time being 40 hours a week. But what if instead of 10,000 full-time workers, you hire 40,000 part-time workers? That extra 30,000 is a boost in employment numbers, which makes him look good. So that's just something to think about. So that's how false optimism comes into play, because some months you're just going to have huge bursts of employment. During those months, you need to go in and actually read the report. Is it full-time worker? Is it part-time workers? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And then if you go to the next level, you need to figure out what type of workers are they. Are these like student jobs? Because during summer months, there might be a burst in summer internships for students. So these are just one of the many factors to consider during seasonal changes. So during summer months, during winter months, during fall months and spring months, etc. So that's false optimism. Now moving on to false pessimism. False pessimism comes from rising unemployment rate. So for this, I have a numerical example. Let's say we start off, so let's say month 1, we start off with unemployment rate, which equals to 1,000 unemployed divided by 1,000 unemployed plus 9,000 employed, gives you a 10% unemployment rate starting off. So this is the first basis month. And then you compare to the next month to figure out what's going on. So there are two cases here. You can either have an expansion or recession. False pessimism comes in from expansion. The reason why it's false is because you're thinking, why is unemployment rate going up while the economy is expanding? So that's why it's false. Versus during a recession, unemployment rate should be rising because people don't have jobs or they're losing jobs. So let's calculate recessions first. So let's say during a typical recession, people just lose jobs and that's it. So let's say from 9,000 we have 8,500 now. So that means 500 people lost jobs. Those 500 people get moved to the unemployment numbers. So this in turn gives us 1,000 plus 500. So at the top we have 1,500 divided at the bottom 1,500 plus 8,500. Notice the bottom number doesn't change. 1,000 plus 9,000 is the same as 1,500 plus 8,500. That still gives you 10,000. 1,500 divided by 10,000 is 15%. So this is true pessimism in the sense of this is supposed to happen in a recession. Now going back to the expansion case, as I mentioned earlier, during an expansion you're expecting unemployment rates to go down, but if they're going up, then you're going to have a false sense of pessimism. Now the reason being is because let's say there are suddenly 500 new jobs in the market. So by the end of this month there will be 500 new jobs and 500 people will get those new jobs. But since you offer 500 new jobs on the market, this causes people who were previously discouraged to enter the job market. So let's say the 500 new jobs causes 1,000 discouraged workers to enter the workforce. And out of those 1,000, 500 people get the job and 500 people stay unemployed. So now this is what you have. You have 1,000 plus the 500 that were previously discouraged and become unemployed now. So that's 1,500. So this is similar to the other side now. And 1,500 is still at the bottom as well. But now, instead of the 9,000 going down, it goes up to 9,500 because they got the new jobs. So let me just enter this on my calculator. You have 1,500 divided by 1,500 plus 9,500. This gives you 13.6%, which is odd because, like I mentioned, during expansions, you expect unemployment rates to go down. But the key thing to keep in mind is you need to know why it went up. Not so much the rate itself, you need to know how it's calculated. That's why they always release the employment numbers along with the unemployment rate so that you can figure out what the difference came in and how it's calculated and all that stuff. So the take-home message for false pessimism for an expansion is during the first couple months, the unemployment rates will always go up because you're going to have more people entering the workforce that were previously discouraged because they don't want to work for low wages or the jobs weren't right for them, etc. So that's it for this lesson. Hopefully now that you have more knowledge of how employment works, how unemployment works, the concerns of the numbers, you may be able to figure out why markets move into the appropriate directions that they move, which may be opposite or maybe the same direction as what the numbers look like. Because sometimes, I'm pretty sure this has happened in your trading careers at some point, you see employment numbers are good. There's a lot of new employment, but markets just move opposite. They're not moving on the optimism, they're moving on the pessimism, because those people know that the new jobs were just part-time workers, which is short-term, which is short-lived, because they know in a few months those part-time workers will be fired anyways, and then it's just going to go right back down. So it's not really improving. So that's it for this lesson. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.